you were willing to take on a monumental task that, frankly, had very little to any chance of succeeding. But you were willing to challenge the DCCC chair, who, granted, it's federal politics, but I'm sure Mr. Maloney was no better than Jay Jacobs regarding New York politics, federal politics, and so forth. Right. What made you decide, even though it should have been another person running for that
yes.
seat, but what made you decide to ultimately take on this monumental task, win or lose? You have our respect 100%. And ultimately, it led to him being unseated. Even though it's a GOP representative, the DCCC chair, I don't think people realize how significant it is that he's been knocked out of Congress. Can you talk about what that race meant and why you ultimately went forward with it?
Absolutely. And I want to say that I cannot tell you how much I appreciate the awareness that you both have of just the nuances of what went on with that race, but really you grasp. You just articulated that so perfectly. Yeah. And I feel like I feel fully seen. So thank you for that.
We see the people behind the curtain. We see the strategy. We see what you're trying to do. And we appreciate that. Sorry, continue.
I think that what I'm about to say is going to sound incredibly crazy to a lot of people. And that is absolutely okay with me. So I want to just preface what I'm about to say with that. I am somebody who really understands that sometimes you have to jump off of the cliff and you, again, might lose or fall or, not be able to come back from that particular cliff jump, but that the jump itself is an act of just important. It's not resistance, because resistance really is something that just perpetuates itself over and over again, but it's like standing up for the values that we say we care about. I think that when it came to the race in New York 17 and the race for Congress, number one, the very fact that our redistricting process really messed our districts up in such a way that it not only confused voters, but it really did lead to voter suppression. And that is something that I have a tremendous difficulty with, because so much of what I ran for in the first place was to bring people to the table who historically had no clue and couldn't care less about what was going on in their political system. And so to have such a tremendous negative impact with redistricting, changing the districts, drawing the lines over to confuse voters who had spent so much time educating themselves and getting involved really just frustrated me tremendously. And then when I saw the person whose job it was to help other Democrats win, push out of his district a sitting member of Congress, Mondaire Jones, who is an important voice, not for just our generation, but for changing the dynamics, the political power in Congress, the importance of what he stands for, and also the fact that it was his district and his home. Watching Sean Patrick Maloney decide, well, I'm going to run in Mondaire, your district, because it seems like statistically, it's a little easier for me to run and win there. And it just so happens that my home is in this district, which is such a, excuse my language, bullshit excuse for somebody who calls himself a leader. Because at the end of the day, when your job is to maximize the number of seats that we have in Congress, your job is to do that. No, if it costs, you have to work a little or raise a little more money, but you actually making sure that all of the Democrats that are elected win their reelection and get the support that they need. You don't put yourself first. And unfortunately, that's what he did. And so, again, not making excuses for Mondaire leaving. Of course, that was his choice to leave. If I was him, I would have stayed. I actually tried very hard to encourage him to do so. He left his district and ran for Congress in Lower Manhattan. And so what that meant was we had Sean Patrick Maloney deciding to run in this district. And again, I knew it was a long shot, but at the same time, sometimes sometimes I know that the chances are low, but that the actual action is an important action to take, whether it's for the present or for the future, because when you have political individuals acting in their own self-interest, that is the antithesis of what it means to be a public servant. And I knew, and I felt this very deep in my heart, that I was done with my time in the Senate. I couldn't have taken that risk or done what I did if I felt like I wanted to go back to the New York State Senate, because that would have been just very difficult for me to be able to do, even though, again, there was always more work to do. But I felt like I did what I came to do. And now it's time for me to move on to something else. And so I felt like I could take that risk. But I also felt like I understood the storm that I was walking into, that they would throw tremendous amounts of money at me, that they would try to essentially crush me or destroy me, and that I would survive it. And the importance of that, again, is because when I think about New York politics, and I just think about politics generally, I'm constantly surrounded by people whose number one priority in public elected office is to hold on to their seat. I know that might sound Pollyanna of me, like, well, Alessandra, like, what do you think their job is to do? Well, I think their job is to serve people. Like, that's like call me completely crazy, but this is not meant to self-serve. So when I saw somebody basically take the opposite approach here, I felt like it was something I could do, and it was something I could do something about. And I knew I could do it because, again, I have, in the fights that you've mentioned, the first fight running for the state Senate, fighting against our former governor in a way that was so difficult that we really did think we would get wiped out of office just because of that. And I think one could probably argue that he was behind a lot of the money spent on some of our races, but that's neither here nor there. But the point is that I knew I could do it and still be able later on to come back into politics if I wanted to, but that I had to take a stand against that because, again, it felt like everything that I fight for every single day, this person embodied the opposite of. And when all you care about, again, is just being reelected and putting yourself first, and you don't care actually about the people you represent or about even invigorating people or making them energized, then I don't particularly believe that you have a place in elected office, especially for the future of what the Democratic Party, I believe, can be. And I think that this general election not only proved that, but I want to just really highlight this. The person I ran against, Sean Patrick Maloney, who, again, lost his general election against a basically, pardon me, but like a no-name assembly member. I mean, really, truly, he was just elected to the assembly about 2 years ago, is really just embarrassing and unacceptable, because when you lose by under 3,000 votes, that's a field margin. And what that tells me, and what that should tell everybody, is that that there was a lack of organization on the ground. And again, you want to zoom out, that means that there is a lack of organization and infrastructure in the state Democratic Party in New York. And that's a problem. So I think it's less about like, well, he lost because of this, or this shouldn't have happened. It's more that I think what we're left with here is that, did I want him to win over Mike Lawler? Absolutely. I don't want Mike Lawler, a Republican who pretends to be a moderate Republican, but really is a MAGA Republican, to represent myself or anybody in the state of New York, because there's no place for that kind of person in elected office either. However, I hope that, and this is my hope, that the losses of him, who runs the entire Democratic arm for members of Congress to, again, have re-election and to win, but also for the state party in New York to take a look at themselves in the mirror and to really get honest about what needs to change. I don't have that much hope that they will do it without the organizing that we are doing to change the leadership there. But I think that, if you ask me right now, well, would you do it again? Would you run for Congress again? And knowing what the outcome would be, knowing that they would hire a van to drive around the district and to tell people that because you voted for, certain criminal justice efforts that, you're releasing quote unquote criminals onto the street. Absolutely, I would do it again. And the reason is because I'm not afraid of these people and the money that they spend. And I think that the more that I can stand for that, hopefully the more that I can inspire others who are afraid to think to themselves, well, she did it. She didn't win, but she's still standing. She's still talking. She's still there. And I can do it too. And we can be less attached to the outcome of these races and more attached to the deep organizing, the values-driven races that will actually ultimately lead to transformational change in the future.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.